All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's response. No, we are not sponsored by World Anvil.
We're not gonna get paid for this.
Heck no. We do this for free. And we'll continue to do so.
Yes,
But today
Quaven's a free whore.
we're discussing overly sarcastic productions fridging video. Specifically Red, one of their hosts. She is eh, she's all right. I like uh some of her other stuff, like her miscellaneous myths and her like breakdown of Shakespeare's, are really really funny. She can't, but um,
Uh, she's one
her
of those YouTubers who's only good when they're being objective.
yes, or when she's doing a parody of something. Her trope talk series is actually pretty interesting. Just she needs to not give her opinion. If she was doing like examinations of tropes, which is normally what she does, it's generally fine. Like her she's done quite a few of them, like examining the mentor trope, the foils. There's a couple of other things she's done that are really fascinating. Like she's done in a couple of videos about ancient gods and how they became sort of how they got to the point where we find them in history. That's pretty interesting. Like she does a lot of interesting stuff, but when it comes to giving sort of her opinion, she's not necessarily very objective.
So, or kind of like Animat, like the last guy we did a response to. Like
Yes.
his videos, when he's like his retrospectives of animation studios are well done. It's just that when it comes to like politics, real world issues, he's an absolute retard.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Um Let it be said now that I am subscribed to OSP. And while I'm not like watching their videos every day, every time they upload, I do watch them on occasion and they are fairly entertaining, so, you know,
So, what about Blue? Is he kind of Is he just as
I
retarded,
haven't
or
watched Blue's videos.
yeah? What's the relation between them?
I have no idea.
I think I've heard someone say they're brother and sister, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I have no idea, and whether they're brother and sister, they're married, whatever, don't care. Genuinely don't care. Honestly, the first indication that I had that she was sort of an SJW type was in 2016. She actually made a video. Oh, after Donald Trump was announced to be the president, she made a video where she basically played guitar and sang, and she was like, "Yeah, tonight's been crazy. Tonight has been awful, and evil has won," kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, some people are just
Yeah, I don't know.
it's frustrating when you get to a point in your life when you realize that most of the people around you are retarded.
hmm Excuse me. Anyway, we've got 19 minutes of this, so let's get started because we're gonna have to do a lot.
Percent guaranteed to not do terrible things to supporting characters. I've talked about this before in its own trope talk, but character deaths are a big deal. They're momentous occasions both in story and out, because not only is the character dead, which is obviously a bummer on its own, but it also means the total loss of all future potential for a given character. All their arcs, dynamics, relationships, everything, all lost in exchange for a one-shot gut punch. Now, most authors...
Okay, so this is the framework by which she sets up this video. Oh, because like she will give examples later, and I know that, but for now, let's just examine the frame by which her argument is coming at us. Because she doesn't qualify character deaths, that means that every character death, no matter what, is a loss to the story, as if every time a character dies on screen or is mentioned to have died off screen, the story has lost something. This is the framework by which she has stated, because she's like, her exact words were, "They are momentous occasions." Meanwhile, here's a pretty good example of it. Here's a pretty good counterexample to this entire framework, and probably this entire video. The opening scene for Rogue. Okay, sorry guys. I spend all day making phone calls. I'm basically talked out by the time this show started. So the opening scene from Rogue One, where character A, the sort of rebel spy, kills the informant. Now, within this framework, that scene, that character, the story of Rogue One is now lost something, is now worse or lesser, or because of that action, because that character is dead. But so, yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, so that's her framework. But if we fit this into the frame, it doesn't necessarily make sense, because that framework starts to fall apart, because that character's death that character wasn't ever going to matter to the story. He's there to set stakes. He serves a purpose, and then his purpose by the end of his scene is served, and we don't need him anymore. To conclude my rant, the framework she's using here is that no character is disposable. But there are millions of disposable characters. Every stormtrooper, every clone trooper, or every droid. Name a minion in a series, and they are disposable. They are characters. They are disposable, but they are disposable characters.
Recognize that this is a hefty loss for their story, so they make damn sure the impact is worth the price. True, non-fake-out main character deaths are often heroic sacrifices, protracted tragedies, or carefully woven resolutions to their arcs after all the loose ends have been tied up. They're usually given time and narrative weight to reflect this cost. The surviving characters will process their grief, reflect on what the loss means to them, and are often fundamentally changed by the experience, maybe carrying on their legacy, setting off on a lengthy quest for vengeance, or viewing their layered and complex life as a personal inspiration to guide their way forward. This is not that trope. Fridging is the cute shortened form of the full name of this trope, Stuffed in the Fridge, named for a now infamous issue of a Green Lantern comic where Green Lantern Kyle Rayner's girlfriend is murdered by the villain Major Force
Hey,
and
Gail
Fridge for him
Simone.
to find when he gets home. Fridging.
Yes.
So does that mean we have to take anything this trope says seriously?
No.
Then our work here is done.
Basically, yes.
But let's keep going, because we like to torture ourselves.
So, if you don't know what fridging is, fridging was made up by a feminist in the 90s because of the actions of a villain. And basically it was this sort of first creeping iterations of women are untouchable beings in comics.
And not just comics, you can see this in other media too. Like there are Dragon Ball fans who flip out over that scene in Dragon Ball Z where Spopovich beats the shit out of Videl. And I'm just like sitting here going, why the fuck are you guys freaking out? A bad guy did a bad guy thing.
Exactly. Like that's sort of what we need to get at here. This fridging trope is the first sort of creeping movements of feminism and feminism, because it wasn't full-blown SJWism yet. yet when this trope was invented. Was basically created to sort of shame authors for killing off secondary female, for killing off female characters. Like it wasn't that, oh, this character's death served no purpose. It was, you killed a woman in a story, yeah, shame. You fridged her. So let's go back a little bit here.
Lantern comic where Green Lantern Kyle Rayner's girlfriend is murdered by the villain Major Force and stuffed in the fridge for him to find when he gets home. Fridging is the very specific subset of character deaths wherein a character is unceremoniously and brutally killed specifically and solely for the narrative purpose of hurting another, more important character.
So,
Okay, so
it's a less important character.
But on top of that, you could say the same thing about mentor characters. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices himself to motivate Luke. Like, that's a thing that happens. Like, mentors often make big sacrifices to motivate the heroes to do something.
And not to mention, it's just
Philip Coulson is another example.
I was gonna say, not to mention, it's a very common trope in fiction for a main character to lose their significant other, to have them get killed or just fall ill or something like that.
All right, so let's read her slide here. A character death that happens only to upset a more important character. Fridgings are plot devices that don't get the same exploration, depth, or gravitas as a major character death would be given. Mostly afflict secondary characters or characters the writer considers broadly unimportant to the story. Yeah, so killing off characters that are unimportant to the progression of the plot, or even a burden to the plot, is fridging, I guess. See, once again, this is the issue. Like, she wants to examine this trope, but at the same time, her own biases are preventing her from examining it, and now she has to paint she has to go as broad as she can. Like, she has, like, this is how SJWs argue pretty much all the time, is they'll paint as broad strokes as possible, but point you to one spot that they painted over, and say that's the problem, and say that's what I was pointing out. So, a character death that happens only to upset a more important character. Okay, Obi-Wan, basically name a mentor figure in any media that dies. How about Krillin's death in Dragon Ball? Like, is that not an example? Is that fridging? Was Philip Coulson fridged? He was a secondary character, and he was used to motivate, and his death was used to motivate the more important characters. I guess it doesn't. I guess that Philip Coulson doesn't count, and most mentors don't count with the second point. But then at the same time, okay. But what about disposable minion characters? Are they fridged? How about characters we don't see die on screen, or characters that serve their purpose to the plot and are never seen again, and it's mentioned they died in some battle? Like, or we see them die or just because or the villain disposes of them offhand because they failed. Like, are those characters fridged?
This motivation can be Watsonian or Doyleist, as in-universe villain motivation or out-of-universe authorial intent. In Watsonian cases, the killer is specifically motivated to kill the Friggy because it'll hurt the character who cares about them. In Doyleist cases, the killer might have all kinds of personal reasons to want to unceremoniously brutalize this character, but the author's motivation in killing the character is only to make the more important character upset. The only narrative role this death plays in story is hurting a different character, and it's still framed as unceremonious and brisk.
Okay. What? There's not a like. Okay, so well, so the death. So if it's authorial intent, so wait, are you Watsonian or Doyleist? Why is there a difference between the two? In this case, there is a genuine difference between the two, but and I can understand the difference between the two, but why in this case does it apply? Like, if you're going to kill off a character in your story, then you intend to kill off the character. Authorial intent is to kill the character. And the villain is motivated to kill the character as well. Both in-universe, both Watsonian and Doyleist interpretations of this event, of Event X, so the death of this secondary character, are correct. Because it's not as if the villain just suddenly up and decides. Is that... Hold on. It's not like the character it's not like the villain up and just randomly decides, I'm going to execute this random character because the winds of the universe demand it. I'm going to hurt this character because I know it will hurt my enemy. And I know it will knock him off his game. It will make him make a mistake. Or her. I'm open to female heroes. Fridging variant victim survives but is very badly hurt, mentally and or physically. Focus is still on anyone but the victim. Okay? But it's not the victim's story. Like, that's not... It's not this victim's story. It's the main character's. Unless we want to just derail our story halfway through and say, fuck it. Let's go and just fucking turn left, and we're going to follow this girl who was tortured and abused, who's by the villains, and we're going to follow her journey instead of the main character. He's going to succeed, but we need to follow her because she's more important, because she was the victim of abuse, who's her torture, or various other means of harming a character.
Fridging almost always refers to character deaths, but sometimes the character is instead subjected to some kind of horrible torture or fate worse than death with the same overall impact. The character that really matters isn't the one targeted for the horror, but the hero who's reacting to it. And the Friggy's personal reaction to their awful situation is usually glossed over in favor of how much that focus character suffers by proxy. Because of reasons, fridging disproportionately affects female characters, often barely...
Okay. Secondary characters are more narratively disposable. Plus, female characters are often in secondary/supporting roles, sidekicks, wives, girlfriends, mothers, subordinates, etc. Equals lots of women in fridges. So,
Yeah. Like how
Yeah.
is this a bad thing?
Especially in action series, yeah, the protagonist is typically male.
Like like Die Hard is the main character's motivation is to get his wife out and like away.
Developed mons or love interests whose only salient character traits are the hero likes them. So when they're brutalized or murdered, often off screen, their more nuanced male hero fam/love interests can become deeply unhappy about it. In fact,
Okay. I thought I had a point there, but I don't. I lost it.
that's a very easy litmus
Damn it.
test to help determine if a character death constitutes fridging or not. If it could happen entirely off screen and have just as much impact on the story, especially if it does happen off screen, it's probably fridging. It's
Okay, hold on.
Wait, I want to read that
Take
again.
back.
Wait. Fridging test number 1. Would it hit the same if it happened off screen? Is the only audience impact how much this upsets your character, how they find it? Okay, wait. What's the point? Like, it's bad that it's better to be off screen or on screen.
I don't know. Like what is the point of this? Why would I run this test?
It would be more impactful to be on screen. Seeing a character die is a lot more impactful than just hearing about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Screen and have just as much impact on the story, especially if it does happen off screen, it's probably fridging. Its only narrative impact is how it bums out the more important characters, with no exploration of how it affects the character actually being brutalized or killed.
So, well, I guess her argument with that first test and that clip is that we should have seen Aunt Peru and Uncle Owen be found and, brutally tortured by the Empire, or to try and find out where the droids are, where the droids were, and then seeing them basically set on fire.
I mean, that's the whole reason. What is that not? Well, at least partly the reason why Luke joins the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, exactly. Like their deaths motivate Luke. Their deaths push Luke to get off Tatooine, to go and be a hero. Like that's the thing. Luke at the very beginning of the film. He wants to go join the Empire. He wants to go get into the Imperial Academy on Tatooine, or I guess a nearby planet somewhere. Or he wants to enroll in the Imperial Academy, and he wants to go see and fight the galaxy. Like he wants to get off Tatooine, where he feels trapped. But this event, but the death of his aunt and uncle, will open his eyes to the brutality and the horrible things the Empire does. And so he uses their deaths as motivation to go and fight them. Excuse me, sorry. Jesus.
Killed off screen is such a dismissive fuck you to a character. There's no send-off, no admission of tragedy. The character becomes nothing more than a plot device for someone else's angst. Side character or not, nobody deserves that.
Wow.
They're not main characters.
They're not main characters, number one. Number two, how? Like, are you saying like George Lucas has just said, you know what? Fuck Aunt Peru and Uncle Owen. I hated them. Their deaths are going to be off screen. I guess that's a fuck you to Aunt Peru, to the characters that George Lucas himself created.
that. Now, the off-screen test isn't quite enough to say if a death is fridging or not. See, while fridging is intended solely to upset another character, well-written character deaths almost always upset the other characters too, and since the character themselves is usually too dead to care, most of the lingering ramifications of their death only affect the other characters, typically by upsetting them. So the distinction between a fridging death and a non-fridging death isn't immediately obvious from just this definition. The key difference.
But she's a secondary female character.
So wait, was she saying that the death of Dracula's wife was not fridging?
I assume so, but then I could easily say she's a secondary female character whose death only serves the purpose of motivating a male character. So yes, it is fridging. So yes, it is fridging. Meanwhile, Aunt Peru and Uncle Owen over here, or what's left, both die off screen, and that's it. Like that, they have served their purpose. So either this is fridging, this is not, or fridging is a terrible trope. We need to pick one lane here, or because it can't be all things and nothings. You can't be everything and nothing simultaneously. This cannot be Schrodinger's trope.
A non-fridging death isn't immediately obvious from just this definition. The key difference is a fridging usually makes the other characters upset briefly and shallowly, while a solid character death makes the other characters grieve. Frequently.
What do you mean? Okay, so I guess Batman's parents didn't get fridged, but, I mean, like, so
you're implying that Luke did not grieve over his aunt and uncle's death?
Yeah. Or better yet, let's circle back, because, this has been running around my head for a while. The death of Philip Coulson in Avengers. According to this part of her argument, that death is fridging because his death is very shallow, and his death is shallow and not mourned by many of the characters.
Oh, he does get mourned by the characters.
Like, he does get mourned. And then his death is immediately forgotten. Like, context-wise, because we have we have an army to stop. But just as an examination of that one scene, Philip Coulson was fridged. Like, that's the thing. That's why this genuinely doesn't make sense what she's saying.
Well,
because at one point, one example may not hold up, but at another point, it holds up perfectly. It doesn't hold up as fridging, does hold up as fridging.
Okay, so was she trying to say that? Was he trying to say that he grieved for Obi-Wan's death, but not for his aunt and uncle?
I guess.
I mean, replay that. Go back like 5 seconds.
Death makes the other characters upset briefly and from just this definition.
That's
The
good.
key difference is a fridging usually makes the other characters upset briefly and shallowly, while a solid character death makes the other characters grieve. Frequently, fridged characters.
Okay, he's screaming no because he just watched him get killed. He probably would have screamed no too if he saw his aunt and uncle being gunned down and lit on fire.
Yeah. And like point to a scene where Luke mourned Obi-Wan after that.
I mean, hell, yeah, he kept hearing Obi-Wan's voice in his head.
Spoken of again after the arc they died in is resolved, or even before it's resolved. Try and convince me that Luke Skywalker was still bummed about Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru 10 minutes later. So as a second...
Should he be sulking over them constantly?
he's standing in a like that entire scene is Mark Hamill going up to a bar, basically standing there and sort of like very clearly just in the slump of what the fuck is my life now? I have lost everything and now I have to throw my lot in with this possibly crazy guy. Okay, all to go after some princess. Like he's not jumping for joy here. Or in this scene, he's not exactly like screaming from the rafters, "Hey, I finally get to leave Tatooine. Yeah!"
Fridging litmus test, I'd like to propose a corollary of the iconic sexy lamp test, which
Okay, hold on. Fridging test number 2. Would it hit the same if it killed their favorite possession? And is it sadder / more profoundly impactful than no, my prized collection?
Depends on what it is. I think it was EFAP brought this up. Like, if the possession like belonged to a dead family member, then yeah,
Like
that possession could mean a lot to the character.
like fucking High Guardian Spice got this right. By the way, next week. Look forward to that.
We're doing it.
Yes. I have things to say about it, but
I still need to watch it.
I haven't finished it yet. But like in the first episode, in one of the first episodes, was a precious possession with, dead mom, with picture of dead mom is damaged. The impact is major, or would be. But I'll talk about that. But High Guardian Spice addressed that. Like, this is a precious possession, and the loss of it hurt the characters, even if it was only temporary.
explores if a story would meaningfully change if a character was replaced with a sexy lamp. This is the property damage test. If a dead character could be replaced by someone's prized Pokemon card collection and their loss would have the same or more emotional impact on the plot, that character was probably fridged. Now, this is
What?
Me,
Okay, no, a dead girlfriend, your girlfriend being murdered and stuffed to the fridge is not the same as your stamp collection getting smashed.
I agree.
is kind of a rarity for this show, but fridging is a bad trope. It's not a frequently misused trope or a hard-to-handle trope, it's bad writing. Character deaths are not bad trope-wise, but fridging specifically indicates a lack of respect for the fridged character and their narrative
Who
potential.
cares?
What
They're
do you
not
mean?
important. They're not
Their
important
potential?
characters. And how is it disrespectful for the character? If the writer has nothing left to do with the character, then yeah, why not just kill them off?
Agreed. Like again, the framework, going back to the sort of thesis opening statement, the framework by which she started this video. Oh, that guy at the beginning of Rogue One, Jesus, I can't remember that movie's name at all. Just at the beginning of Rogue One, his death doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It has no bearing on the plot. It is just something that happens.
Yeah, all it really does is just set up that the Rebel Alliance is willing to get its hands dirty to accomplish their goals.
Exactly. So it doesn't motivate a character. The only salient character trait, the only character traits we have of this guy is he's somewhat nervous, and discount Poe Dameron likes him. That's it. Like, and so he's killed off. So I guess his death is a fridging, but but I fail to see how it indicates a lack of respect for the character, or to have them killed off when they've achieved their arc. or when they serve no more purpose to the story. Jesus, we've got a long way to go.
Weighs a character's potential worth to the story and concludes that all their future potential and growth and dynamics in the narrative are worth less than another character feeling kinda bad for a little while. This is reflected
What do you mean?
both outside of the story and in the story, since this character's killer, be it the character who kills them or the author who makes the call, demonstrably couldn't give a shit about them in their own right, instead choosing to focus entirely on how ending this character's life will make another character upset for an arc or two. Their own life and death isn't as important or deserving of focus as hurting the hero by
I assume that was supposed to be a reference to Final Fantasy VII.
I guess.
I
But
have
still.
not played that game, unfortunately, so I can't comment on that. I assume Cloud and the others are still pissed off that Sephiroth killed Aerith.
Regardless, she's sort of stuck in this sort of now she's sort of stuck in this loop where yes, it was where yes, where these characters would have probably been burdens on the plot if they had proceeded further, but at the same time, their deaths don't serve any purpose. Like that's the thing. So what? The author determines how much potential a character has. Like, this is the line between fantasy and reality. Like, in reality, yes, this is a thing. This is true. Someone's death basically means that someone's dying means their impact on the world and whatever they could have done, whatever they could have been, whoever they could have been, good, bad, neutral, doesn't matter. They're done. They don't have an impact anymore, which isn't even true because they could still motivate someone else. Their story could matter. Their family could use them as sort of a catalyst to make changes, any number of things off of that. But in fiction, characters only have the potential that the author is willing to give them. So saying that this is better than this is complete fabrication, because this may never have existed in the author's plan at all, ever.
Successfully indicates that the killer is a terrible person, but it also reflects a level of dismissiveness from the author. A love interest / beloved character can be killed or deeply, deeply hurt in a way that predominantly affects the plot by hurting another character without it feeling like fridging. This is largely a matter of the execution, pun intended. If the death is unceremonious,
because Dracula's entire motivation is his wife getting killed, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he won't shut the fuck up about his wife getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people suffer. Everybody suffers loss at least at once or twice in their life. But the thing is, you eventually have to move on. Otherwise, it's just going to fuck you up.
She has nose.
It's a pretty bad sign, since it doesn't really give the character their due. It doesn't highlight the tragedy of their life and potential loss, it just focuses on why and how this will make the main character sad.
What do you mean? Wolverine's primary motivation for going after the people that did this shit to his wife, like, the whole movie basically is the story of, hey, this whole, like, the whole reason Wolverine does the thing with the adamantine is because someone killed his wife and he wants to find them and make them pay. But it turns out his wife was still alive.
You remember that movie better than I do.
I only know that because I watched EFAP and I got to this point.
Oh.
Fridging feels bad. Because the dead character isn't being treated like a character, so the death's impact is limited to other better written characters feeling bad, not the audience mourning.
How are they not being treated like a character? People, they die.
Like, characters die, people die. Like, this isn't, like, this whole thing, this is just her opinion.
Every character is the hero of their own story, and if they die just to further someone...
No, that's not the case. In real life, that is the case. You are the hero of your own... Everyone is the hero in their own story. But that's not the case in fiction. This is sort of that line between fantasy and reality. In fantasy, in fiction, when we tell a story, it has a main character, it has a hero, it has a protagonist. It has a protagonist. Everyone else comes second to them. If Rick Riordan had decided at some point that Annabeth had served her purpose and killed her off, many people would have been upset, but it still would have been it still would not have been fridging because, hey, she's not real.
else's story, it denies that character the basic dignity of being their own person who exists as more than just a prop in someone else's life. It takes their death...
What do you mean? So, okay, so real world. In two soldiers, they are best friends. They're best friends, and they go into combat together, and one dies and the other lives. Has soldier number 2 been fridged because he died? Because God, the universe, karma, what have you, decided his time on this earth was done, and boom. That's it? Like, that's what you're saying. That's what you're arguing here. Is that because someone else feels bad about the death of another living being, regardless of however much you knew about them, that's fridging. I hope, audience, you're seeing how convoluted this shit is getting. And how hard she's having to reach to try and connect this trope to bad writing.
Death and the loss of their entire future life and minimizes it down into a short, brief emotional impact on another character.
Again, these aren't real people.
It's dismissive. Now, we're about to enter the spicy take zone because, you know, the MCU is my old favorite punching bag, but personally, this is how I felt about most of the major character permadeaths in Infinity War and Endgame, especially Gamora and Black Widow. Loki and Vision do die fairly quickly and unceremoniously, primarily to hurt the characters invested in them, but they're given narrative weight and some dignity in the process. It feels unfair and tragic in-universe that they couldn't be saved, rather than feeling like bad writing. But
what do you mean, bad writing?
It's not bad writing they killed off either of the two characters, especially Black Widow. She sacrificed herself so Hawkeye could have the Soul Stone. That's not bridging. That's a heroic sacrifice. That is the most heroic thing a heroic character can do.
And then they basically spend the next 15 minutes of the film mourning her.
Yeah, they make a big deal.
They make a big deal about it.
What's that?
They make a big deal about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Gamora, well, it's actually kind of fascinating. In the 2 movies she'd been in, her entire arc had centered on escaping Thanos and his deeply fucked up abusive parenting situation, healing and growing as a person, and learning to trust and even love her new friends. Her dynamic with Nebula was following that same track, realizing they weren't enemies but victims of the same terrible situation and the same manipulative, tortuous narcissist. Thanos' shadow looms large over Gamora's arc as the root cause of all the pain and suffering in her life, and the thing that scares her most that she's constantly fighting to escape. In Infinity War, Thanos is told by Red Skull that in order to get the Soul Stone, he has to sacrifice something he loves. So he kills Gamora, like permanently. She's dead. Now that's bad enough. It's worse that
Well,
it.
no, an
What do you
alternate
mean?
timeline version takes her place.
Regardless, what do you mean it's worse that it works?
Gamora believes that Thanos is incapable of love, and
Yeah, but that's not true. Evil people are capable of love. Or some approximation of that. Hitler was married. There's pictures of him, and like Hitler was married. He had friends. He had family. Like that's the thing about like Stalin was the same. Like he had friends, family, he had children, for God's sake. Like do you like that's the thing. Like this is such a juvenile interpretation of right and wrong. Like evil people are an evil person is incapable of loving another. Like Thanos's version of love is disgusting and toxic, yes, but it is still but his mind, it is still love.
quite frankly, by every
And
indication.
plus, just with Gamora as a character, her her arc was pretty much complete at that point.
Her arc was complete.
All that was all that was really left to do with her is just have her and Quill get married and have kids.
Yeah, exactly. Like she'd already grown to completeness and fullness as a character.
Yeah, and it's really, and it's also, and also like it, if I remember correctly, yeah, it also doesn't it motivate Nebula, like it's what gets her to actually stay on the good guy side.
Yeah. Like it motivates Nebula, it motivates Quill. Oh, Mantis feels bad. Like you can hear it. Like her actress does a great job in communicating that that sort of her. I know it's probably her empathic abilities, but when she cries out, he mourns. You can literally feel the pain. Like she is very much experiencing the pain he feels. Well, like
She's right. He's a raging narcissist who can't see past his own chins, and this should have been the test of character that screwed him over. And also, like, you must kill your loved ones to get this powerful MacGuffin and become strong is like baby's first obvious secret test of moral character, and it's frankly criminal that killing your loved ones was actually the only way to get the stone. That's just lazy writing. Like,
okay,
God, I really need
hold
to
up,
rewatch Yu Yu Hakusho. It's a good
hold up,
series.
hold up. So let's rewind here. Let's rewind here. It's not, oh hey, it's like Yu Yu Hakusho. Oh, that guy very clearly is the main character. But and you could argue Thanos is the main character in Infinity War. But I hasten to point out that these people you're using in counter examples here are not villains. These are not people that will compromise their ethics, their more ethical and moral principle to gain power, to gain something out of it. Like these are not the people. Well, so to compare this, to use these examples and say Thanos should have failed here, or is to say Thanos was the hero of Infinity War and Thanos was right. Which, he was, but the way he went about it was completely wrong.
You think it was right for him to snap half the universe out of existence?
No, he was right about the sort of inevitable collapse of civilization because of limited resources. I mean, he'd watched it happen to his own world. He wasn't wrong for that. His conclusion isn't wrong. His methodology is. His conclusion that, oh shoot, billions upon billions will suffer and die because resources on planets are resources and habitable planets are limited within the universe.
Yeah, I mean, he could,
Let
and with all the
how do we fix it?
yeah, with all the resources at his own disposal, he could have easily had maybe colonized uninhabitable planets and made them into just farming planets.
Exactly. Like his methodology is incorrect. His conclusion is. And this is why Thanos is such a great villain in Infinity War and Endgame. He has his conclusion is correct. It is the methodology by which he achieves this sort of balance, his beliefs that is wrong.
You had the grimdark option and you had the actually interesting option, and you picked grimdark because you thought grimdark was automatically more interesting. That's just disappointing. Anyway.
What do you mean grimdark? Grimdark versus more interesting. The movie stops if Thanos loses. The heroes win. Everything that happened. So if Thanos fails, so say, let's for a moment jump into this world. So Thanos.
But it'd be bad enough if.
Sorry, I have like a plate of food and I rubbed it up against my desk. Let me put it up there. There we go. All right. So Thanos throws Gamora over the cliff. But nothing happens. He turns to Red Skull and asks, well, where's the Soul Stone? He says, well, you didn't sacrifice. Ha, that was a test. You're not getting the Soul Stone ever. You're not getting the Soul Stone ever, and you just killed the one thing you loved. You're a terrible person. Ha 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 ha. Roll credits. Because basically everything else everyone did throughout that entire movie is utterly pointless. There's no reason for Thanos to go invade Earth for Vision's for the Mind Stone, because it won't work, because the snap won't work without the Soul Stone. Well, there's no reason for him to go after the Time Stone either, because it won't work without the Soul Stone. And he already knows he can't get that. So basically at the end, in this sort of more interesting Infinity War, Thanos fucks off about halfway through the movie and is never seen or heard from again. Tony Stark, Doctor Strange, the Dark Order, or basically everybody else is just like, wait, where the fuck did our boss go? Oh, and they like, where the fuck did the villain go? Where are we just done? I thought this was end of universe kind of thing.
Yep. So she's trying to say that the grim dark version, is not the more interesting one.
Yes.
I mean, well, no, that's this
that...
grim dark version is the more interesting one, because I mean, the MCU for the most part is pretty lighthearted.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this is an dark that leads to the darkest moment in the entire thing.
Yeah, this is one of the stages that leads to the end of Infinity War. That moment that that it still causes people to like emotionally stutter
Yeah, like
or watching it.
the entire MCU is pretty much leading up to this point, just from the introduction of the first Infinity Stone.
Which at the time we didn't even know was an Infinity Stone.
Yeah, really good setup.
Hmm. But
Yeah,
that's
see, you,
the
you just have two completely, seemingly, yeah. Thor: Dark World had two seemingly unrelated MacGuffins, and all of a sudden, one of the Asgardians just drops. Oh yeah, these are. It's dangerous to keep more than one Infinity Stone in the same place. Like it's good. It's good build up.
hmm. I also would like to point out that, like, again, circling back, this sort of idea that ethical conundrums matter to evil people.
If they just undercut Gamora's whole personal arc by saying that the irredeemably evil overarching supervillain who slaughtered her people and tortured her in Nebula for decades actually truly loved her all along, it crosses the line twice by having
I mean, yeah,
But
he did
he
love her.
did love her.
He was
Like
just, he was crazy.
this is what I was saying earlier. Like, this is such a juvenile interpretation of love. Like, bad people aren't capable of love. They don't love anyone. They don't have people in their lives that they care for at all. Well, they're just monsters.
Yeah, I mean, hell, a lot of abusive partners still probably love their partners.
Mhm.
They're just, they're fucked up in the head. They're fucked up people.
They're genuinely toxic and fucked up people.
Yeah, but they'll love their partner, and sometimes the person being abused loves them back,
Yeah,
despite
exactly.
it
Like
all.
like that's why this is so juvenile. Like this idea, this whole like she's acting like love is sort of this pure, infallible emotion that only good people and only good or neutral people can experience. Evil people don't experience love for anything. Like dictators love their country, they're patriots. But like I again, we're crossing the line twice again. So let's.
him prove that he loved her by murdering her. Gamora's entire arc and place in the narrative is undercut and sacrificed.
No, he wasn't proving that he loved her by murdering her. He was I mean, he was murdering her so he can get the stone. He needed the stone to accomplish his goals. Hell, right before he throws her off the cliff, he says, "I ignored my destiny once, never again," and then throws her off the cliff.
Like the point of the soul stone is to be, yes, to be that final ethical test, but at the same time you can't, like, at the same time you have to acknowledge the sacrifice, like, to acquire this power.
Yeah, okay. So
You have to
sorry, let's just say Thanos would not have killed her, or if he knew he did. If Thanos would not kill her if he didn't have to. He had to accomplish his goal. He didn't want the entire universe being doomed, so he made for him the ultimate sacrifice. Sorry, go on.
exactly. No, you're absolutely right. One second, I'm gonna be right back.
Yeah, it's very much the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And in this case, Thanos himself is that few. He has to give up what's most precious to him so he can do what he believes is helping the rest of the universe. Oh Lord. Talking to myself, talking to myself.
Sorry. My cat was into something he shouldn't be.
Ooh.
Character trait that makes no sense for him and to make Star-Lord sad so he acts dumb in the finale. Oh,
What do you mean?
I mean, yeah, he acted dumb, but yeah, he just realized his girlfriend, his lover, died. Thanos murdered her. Naturally, he's going to lose his shit.
And what do you mean that it's an odd character trait? I would argue it humanizes him.
I mean, Star-Lord is a pretty, what's the word, brash? Reckless?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what Star-Lord does, what Quill and Star-Lord does in that scene is perfectly in line with his character. But she said before, like, it's a weird character trait to give Thanos this affection for his daughters. Why is that odd? Like, one of the reasons he improves, like, one of the reasons he implants them and tortures them when they fail is because he wants them to improve. Sick and twisted, absolutely. Still a desire, still arguably, still very much coming from a place of affection. Sick and twisted affection, but affection nonetheless.
Oh, and to make Thanos sad, which is given more focus and weight than Star-Lord being sad. Because obviously, making the pure evil villain kinda bummed out was worth the
He's
cost.
not pure evil.
He's not. Like, he's not evil.
Like, okay, Red Skull. Red Skull is pure evil. Let's see. Ultron's pure evil. Hell, a lot of the one-dimensional MCU villains are pure evil. This guy, like, what makes him the best villain is that he's three-dimensional.
Exactly. Like, he's not evil. He is.
I mean, he is evil, but he has good intentions. I guess you'd call that like an anti-villain.
No, no, no. He's not. He's not pure evil. That's the problem. Like, he's not someone you can demonize because like, again, he has seen the end result of overpopulation, of war, of disease, of famine. He has seen it. He has seen the apocalypse, and he doesn't want anyone else to have that happen to them. His method of doing so is wrong.
Yeah. Once again, once again, it's not done to make him sad. It's done to show that he's willing to sacrifice everything he has to accomplish what he believes will lead to a better universe.
Again, yeah, like Thanos' logic in sacrificing Gamora is I can do this. I can sacrifice the thing I love the most because everyone else will benefit far and away more. They will not understand. Like, Thanos says this multiple times. No one gets it. No one gets it because they don't know. Thanos is such a good villain because Thanos has seen it. Thanos has seen the apocalypse that's coming. He's lived through it. He is the sole survivor of that apocalypse. And he doesn't want anyone else to experience that. The problem is not in his conclusion or his thought process, but it is in his method of achieving the goal. This is where he comes into conflict with the other characters.
Marvel's most interesting heroines. Like, I see what they were going for, but it
Gamora was kind of bland.
Gamora was kind of bland.
didn't work well, it was a bad idea, and it completely undercut everything Gamora had in the previous movies, which is very disappointing.
No,
I very much
Gamora was
disagree.
not the main character of that movie, though. Thanos was.
Yeah, exactly.
And besides, it's not like, and I mean, once again, we have Endgame where we have a Gamora who comes back.
Meanwhile, Black Widow's death is similar to Gamora's, but is bad for different reasons.
Not bad at all. Once again,
Agreed.
Because like looking at her entire character, she was pretty much trained since early childhood to be a mindless assassin, just to be an assassin, completely subservient to whoever her boss is. But eventually, she defects and joins Shield, and ultimately she goes. I mean, like I said, she ends up choosing to make the ultimate sacrifice. She was, I guess, created to be an assassin, but she died as a hero.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she didn't have presumably with the KGB, she had no choice in anything she did. But her killing herself so Hawkeye could have the Soul Stone is her making a choice.
Because unlike Gamora, who had too much character weight and potential to warrant her unceremonious death, Black Widow was completely underutilized by every other movie she's been in with the arguable exception of Winter Soldier.
What do you mean?
I mean, there's like 6 characters in the first 2 Avengers movies. Yeah, some characters are going to have more development than others, but even then, yeah, in Age of Ultron, there was a lot of Black Widow in there. She wasn't underutilized at all.
Exactly.
I mean, if anything, I would say the one who got the most underutilized would probably be Thor.
By the
Of
way,
the first 6.
of the first 6, yeah, I would say Thor suffers probably the most from underutilization. Him or Hulk, but really Hulk only has one mode, and that's smash. Whereas Dr. Banner is the more interesting character, which is why it upsets me so much that they fucked it up. They fucked it up in Endgame.
I know that like what they should have. We should have. I like the idea of Hulk and Banner merging into one being, but we need to have actually seen that.
I wish it had been sort of instead of like more of instead of like, oh, I need to control Hulk. He's a dangerous creature. Banner coming to sort of understand that the Hulk is part of him. Like the Hulk is part of him, and accepting that.
Yeah, my idea for what they should have done was it's like Hulk and Banner, since Infinity War showed that the two of them can actually talk with each other. So in Endgame, we need to actually have that scene where Banner and Hulk actually talk to each other.
I agree.
They know that they know they have to fight Thanos again. Let's just say that in this version, Thanos shows up. Well, also in my version, in my version, well, also in my version, it'd still be the same Thanos from Infinity War. Regardless, they they know they have to fight Thanos, so they need to work things out and make peace with each other. And so, in doing so, they become Grey Hulk. They've got Hulk's strength, but Banner's intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically acting like one being. And that way we also get so in Infinity War, Hulk could not beat Thanos on his own, and Banner could not beat Thanos on his own either, because Hulk was strong but too stupid, and Banner wasn't strong at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to combine their strengths together.
I think instead of sending him after the Time Stone, they should have sent Banner after the Mind Stone, and have that scene play out. Have the scene sort of have that same scene where Banner and Hulk talk to one another, and have it happen when Bruce acquires the Mind Stone.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Because once again, we needed to have Hulk versus Thanos round 2.
I agree.
Really, the last time we see the Hulk, he bitches out. He doesn't want to fight Thanos again. He's too scared. And then next thing we know, it's just Banner with Hulk, Banner with uh I don't want to say Hulk's body, Banner with like slightly Hulk's body. Like a little
We had this franchise
thinner.
for a decade, and we never got an arc for Widow that was deeper than she's hot or she's boning the Hulk.
We had an arc. She was a KGB assassin. She's troubled by her past because she had to kill people. Like yeah, she had a pretty solid story arc, and we didn't even need to see a Black Widow movie we didn't even need the Black Widow movie to do that to
I
add
agree.
anything. Really, all
I
they
wish it had been more of a spy thriller. Bring back, like, have Coulson, like, have her be recruited and like, have
exactly
her
exactly it
recruitment to Shield. Like, there's so many interesting things they could have done. Like her dynamic with Hawkeye, fucking Budapest. Let's do that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It should have been an origin story. It should have been how she joined Shield, how she met Hawkeye, and so forth.
Instead, it's a mess. And we're gonna bring in Crimson Dynamo because he's Russian.
Red Guardian,
Hmm.
and that's an actual joke in the movie where one of them accidentally calls him Crimson Dynamo, and he says, "No, it's Red Guardian."
This made her narratively disposable, but you can tell that the writers.
What do you mean narratively disposable? In Avengers, she brings back Hawkeye. She's solely responsible for recruiting the Hulk.
Yeah, she is the best female character in the MCU.
Like she does a lot. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure she actually saves Cap from getting stabbed in the back a couple
yeah.
times.
Like I can agree with Red that I don't like that she got killed off in Endgame, but not for the same reasons as her. It's because I liked her character.
Yeah,
She w-
exactly. Her death has impact and narrative weight because we like her. Like she's awesome. And you know that's true because I'm gay. And like her attractiveness doesn't click. Sorry.
Realized she
It
was
does
too
with me, for the record.
disposable for it to be impactful, because for the first half of Endgame, they speedrun the whole characterization process by suddenly giving her some character focus.
What do you mean? We get plenty of character focus from her. Her conversation with Loki about how, like, about why is she on the side of the angels? Well, because I have read. Why are you doing this? Because I have read in my ledger. Because I have things that I've done that I need to make up for. Meanwhile, well, in Winter Soldier, it's, oh, my past has come back to haunt me. I need to help Cap bring Bucky back. Like, also, I can't have children, and that genuinely makes me feel like a monster. Like what they did to me, what the Red Room did to me. They turned me into something less than human. And then in Endgame, Infinity War and Endgame, it's, oh, I guess I in Civil War it's, hey, I can be human. I can have fun. I do enjoy the characters, and I agree with Iron Man and Cap is wrong. What happened needed to not happen. Like when she switches sides about halfway through the fight, you sort of start to figure out, she's doing, like, she's friends with Cap. And then in Endgame, it's, hey, we don't have as many characters to focus on. Let's focus on Widow. How is she doing? Because remember, Tony Stark at the beginning of Endgame is lost in space, presumed dead by many, many people. Steve Rogers is Hawkeye's gone rogue, basically. And Nat has been, and because Steve basically put down the shield, well, Nat is left to run the Avengers. So we spend more time with her.
Dynamic with the other heroes and an alleged personal arc about treasuring the Avengers as a found family all along. It was
She's an assassin. Like her entire thing. Like she's a super spy. She's a spy in like Black Widow specializes in infiltration and assassination. Her whole shtick, her whole skill set from very young is training to manipulate and display emotions, and precisely display the emotion she wants you to see. Like that's her whole deal. She does it with Loki. Like it's in a premier example in her conversation with Loki. She sort of she turns away and pretends to sort of be broken, like he's gotten to her.
an attempt to make up for lost time so we'd be sold on her heroic sacrifice, but it was clearly token. The fact that the movie completely stopped acknowledging her death 5 minutes after they got back is really just kind of indicative of how little she actually mattered.
What are you talking about? They acknowledge it twice.
They acknowledge it multiple times.
Yeah, they acknowledge it after they get back, and then after they get back, Thanos shows up, and then they have the fight, and then after that fight, after Stark's funeral, then they bring it up again.
Tony's heroic sacrifice got every hero in the MCU paying their respects, a protracted funeral scene, and an entire movie about how hard it is for the MCU to move on without him. Tasha got a bench in a lake and a solo movie a year and a half after she died.
And at the end, and in the post-credit scene of Black Widow, there is a grave for her, and a lot of people visit that grave and leave flowers and other things at her grave. But yeah, people acknowledge it.
Supposed to believe she really mattered. The story should have acted like it, and it should have acted like it for longer than just like an hour long.
I highly doubt Red will see this movie, but on the off chance, did you actually watch this movie? But when you were collecting the clips, or do you have like an editor doing that for you? Because I mean, you've clearly got clips from the movie, so surely you saw the movie. Because the way you describe it, it sounds like you didn't actually watch the movie, or you have you barely remember it. Sorry, go on.
I agree.
Because once again, they acknowledge her death. They mourn for her.
Yeah, we have they mourn her. They Hulk after he snaps everything back to normal. He says, "I tried to bring her back. I wanted her back."
I guess it didn't work because she died in an alternate universe.
No, I think the whole thing is, the implication with the Soul Stone is that the sacrifice becomes the stone. That was my interpretation, at least. That was the only reason. That was the only thing I could think of is that the sacrifice has to be meaningful, number one, and so it has to be something you love. Would make sense. But the other thing was the reason that they can't come back is because they themselves become the stone.
Okay.
That was my interpretation, at least.
Makes I can see that. Plus, and I guess another explanation could be that Banner can only do one thing at a time with each snap. So the first option was, okay, bring back everybody that Thanos killed the Snap.
Mm-hmm.
But then trying to bring back Black Widow had to be something he performed with a different Snap, but he had already fucked up his arm with the last one.
Yep.
So a second one would kill him, or maybe a little bit of that third option in the one you said.
To advance the plot for stupid, contrived reasons. Which
What do you mean? Stupid, contrived reasons? She sacrifices herself to save billions of people. Billions upon billions, an entire universe's worth of people she saves by doing this. I fail to see how that is stupid, contrived.
is she just getting too
Like,
expensive?
okay, so I mean, sure, you can make the argument that her funeral and Stark's funeral should have been at the same time,
I agree.
but from a narrative perspective, it makes more sense for it to be Stark because he is the centerpiece of the entire MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense for him to have his own personal funeral, and that to be the most impactful one.
Is that what the problem was? I mean, come on, guys. And it's kind of telling that the MCU has rolled back or undercut all 4 of those deaths in one way or another. Loki and Gamora have time-displaced versions with 0 character development running around to replace their more interesting dead versions.
At least someone said it. Not about Gamora. About Loki. Because, the alternate universe Gamora read doesn't have 2 movies with Peter Quill to get her character development.
Yeah, and presumably we'll see her in Guardians 3.
Oh yeah.
And we'll see what kind of relationship they have.
Yeah, exactly. This is time to establish a new dynamic.
They might try tackling the theme about destiny versus free will.
Yeah.
Will I fall in love with, is it destiny that I fall in love with Quill like my previous my counterpart did, or am I free to not do that? Yeah, we'll see.
Vision got an actual proper send-off in WandaVision, and Wanda got to
Also, for the love of God, change the background music. Stop playing the same goddamn song on infinite loop.
No, that's just something that happens. It's in all their videos.
I know, that's exactly.
All of these ones.
I know, that's what I mean. Change the background music. Stop playing this one song constantly.
Copyright. And they're big enough that someone would definitely try.
He's got his own not quite the same copy running around now for future appearances. And of course, Black Widow is finally getting that solo movie we were promised, which is a damn hard sell at this point now that she's already dead and thus frankly irrelevant. If the deaths had...
Thank you.
Yep, it could have been, like I said, should have just been an origin story. It could still be, sorry, what?
Or instead of, Captain Marvel...
Yes, that was her solo.
We could have gotten Black Widow.
I agree with you 100%. I've stood by that
I still
statement
think
for the past couple years.
An origin story.
Yeah, just just should have been the origin story, and even then, it could still be impactful, even if we know she won't die in this movie. It just depends on how the execution is. I mean, at the back of our minds, we know that most of these superheroes aren't going to die in their own movies.
Mm-hmm.
Had been properly impactful and narratively worth the cost, none of this rollback would have been necessary. Now, in fairness, the fact of the matter is that characters are not real people.
Okay, so are you just gonna walk back everything you've said up to this point? You've still got 9 minutes. You've still got 10 minutes left. I guess we're just hitting the rewind button.
Characters are parts of a story and they exist to further a narrative, and some of them really are just props in other characters' lives. And that's not a morally bad thing. But the story probably shouldn't make you think that. Sure, we, the audience, may be.
What do you mean? The story shouldn't make you think that? Are you telling me that I, as author of Story Watt of Moon Shadow Ninjas, must give you the backstory of all of my villainous characters? Like, let's once again use an example here. The harpists from Kung Fu Hustle. By the way, that's their harp. Her harp sword shit is some of the coolest that's the coolest power ever. Back on track. The harpists, they show up because they're bad. They are paid assassins. So they show up, they kill 3 people, and then they are soundly defeated. Just because that doesn't make the narrative bad, nor does it make the story worse. Like, I don't. What do you mean the story shouldn't make you think characters are disposable? Minions, we know the droid army, they're disposable. The clones, disposable. Oh, even Porkins was disposable. We all sort of intrinsically knew that. We are watching a story. In order for there to be stakes, there has to be conflict. And and very often conflict does lead to injury or even death.
Be able to guess that the hero's small, peaceful town and stern but fair father figure just exists to get torched by the Dark Lord in episode 1 to set up the inciting incident and set them on the hero's journey, but the hero doesn't know that.
Okay? Yeah, the hero doesn't know that. But, so are you saying that the hero shouldn't react? Should react differently? Hey, what are you saying here?
And that's what's supposed to be important about this. To the hero, that's their whole world. Torching that town and icing that father figure off screen just tells the audience that the hero might theoretically care, but we don't have to, and the story won't really convince you that the hero does care.
If this event is the inciting, like, you just contradicted yourself in your last sentence. If the inciting incident, the thing that causes the story to occur, is the death of his father, the death of our hero's stern father, and the burning of his town, regardless of whether it happens on screen or not, that's motivation. That's not fridging. Doesn't even exist. It's not bad writing for this to happen off screen. Why are you acting like it? I really wish this pen light would work.
Disconnects us from someone we're supposed to be relating to, and it undercuts the emotional impact of the death when the emotional impact of the death is the only thing this trope has.
What do you mean? Like, so so now you're saying we, the audience, are unable to empathize with a character or when tragedy strikes them? Like, I have a hometown, I have a dad. I would be kind of upset and want revenge if someone went and killed them and burned my town down. You know, I can empathize with that. I can sympathize with the character. Or that adds narrative weight. So every character, this is sort of that every character must look exactly like me. He in order for me to relate to the story. Otherwise, I just can't do it.
Yeah, I'll never understand those types of people, or that type of thought processing that the character has to be like the same, has to be the same race as me for me to relate to them.
It has to be fat like me. They have to be transgender like me. They have to be disabled like me.
But yeah, it's like
They have to be gay like me.
yeah, I've just seen, so it's like in the, I guess the at the red carpet promos for Eternals, someone saying like, oh, people are going to for the first time see themselves in these characters. Like, how? These are immortals. They're not.
These are no immortal alien beings.
Yeah,
Things
people
that
are
have
not going
existed.
to. Yeah, people are not. Or yeah, not every black person is going to see themselves in the black dude up on there, because they, believe it or not, SJWs, minorities are individuals. Each one has their own beliefs, their own thought processing. They're all different. And any black person that does subscribe to the idea of only see myself in other black characters, you're a what's a good word to describe it?
They have no personality.
A racial tribalist.
Now, if the father figure had been with us for, say, 2 seasons, or the first act or 2 of a movie, serving as a mentor figure for instance, we would expect him to die with some fanfare, and we'd be weirded out and upset if he didn't. A heroic sacrifice, a dying monologue, an admission that the hero made him a better man and so very proud, several references to him after he dies so we remember how he affected the hero's journey. If we didn't get that kind of thing,
Okay, yeah, but the inciting incident is just as important as that heroic sacrifice. Arguably more important, because the inciting incident is the start of the story.
we'd feel cheated. But just because
But the father figure being a mentor figure and dying in a heroic sacrifice moment is just as valid as the father being the stern father figure being executed by the evil overlord and the main character's hometown burned to the ground. Like, they're achieving different things here.
we, the audience, haven't seen the Chapter 1 dead dad for very long, the author feels comfortable just torching the place off screen after a single expository line of dialogue, and then expects us to feel for the hero when the story hasn't made this death feel meaningful. In this
Ow, ow, ow. Excuse me, what I was actually going to say, before my cat decided he needed to claw my foot, is... Hold on, I lost what I was going to say because my cat
line of
decided...
dialogue, and then expects us to feel for the hero when the story hasn't
Should've
made
shared your
this
food
death
with him.
feel meaningful. In this structure, the amount of voice
But no, I didn't share my food with him.
Maybe that's why he's clawing at you.
But why would you assume that? Why would you assume? But yes, we the audience are not terribly torn up. Like, so basically at this point her argument is every character death must be narratively significant. But even that, like, has to be treated the exact same, from the lowest minion to the, like, evil villain, to the mentor figure or that trained the hero, to hell, the hero himself. Everyone's death has to be given equivalent weight, regardless of their importance to the plot, regardless of whether or not they need to be in the next few scenes. We have to spend time with them, with every single solitary character, Otherwise, it's just a wash. This is why George R. R. Martin hasn't finished Game of Thrones yet. He's got too many characters. He's just lost himself.
Way to character death is given is not proportionate to how important the character is, it's proportional to how much screen time the character was given, which has nothing to do with how the characters should be reacting to this loss. Fridging is a very disliked trope for several reasons.
It's disliked by feminism.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not disliked by very many people. I imagine just ask most people, they'd probably say, "What the fuck does that mean?"
But even people who know, either say yes, say like no, I don't like fridging, or they say fridging doesn't exist. If they're smart.
So has she already talked about like fridging as a character backstory?
No.
So like, is it fridging that Bruce Wayne's parents were shot
Yeah,
by her logic?
I think so, yeah. Some character deaths have caveats that reduce how tragic / unpleasant they are. Heroic sacrifice, personal contentment, thoughts of loved ones, but fridging never does.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I thought of what could be considered a good example of fridging. It's you only live twice. So James Bond has this. James Bond is horribly disguised as a Japanese person in a very horrible disguise. But he has this girl that's kind of posing as his wife. She ends up someone tries to poison Bond in his sleep, but then the girl ends up taking the hit and she dies, and then it's never brought up again. That you could almost consider fridging, but even then, she was never. I guess she wasn't really meant to be the Bond girl of the movie. I think it was a different Japanese girl.
Even so, like I would say that's not fridging at all, because she does, like, her death has significance. She dies saving Bond's life.
For one thing, you'll be hard-pressed to find a heroic death trope that people like. Heroic sacrifices are basically the only one that's even halfway appreciated, since for the most part, killing a character is gonna feel bad. But more importantly, fridging lacks the counterbalancing qualities that can make a character death feel satisfying or earned. A hero might die gallantly defending their loved ones, which is heartwarmingly heroic with an element of free will and choice, or fully at peace.
Yeah, Black Widow did that.
Yeah.
And okay, we already explained Gamora. Never mind. Let's keep going.
Natural conclusion to their arc, or with some other caveat that makes the audience believe that their death works to end their personal arc. And if their death is
like that is the end of Darth Vader's arc. That's him fulfilling the prophecy.
I think she's trying to use that as a character death done right.
Oh.
Tragic and unfair, it'll often be tortuously prolonged to really drive home to the audience that, yeah, sorry, it's not a fluke or a fake out, the character isn't making it through this one. For a classic Fullmetal Alchemist example,
I mean, yeah, Jason Todd gets brought back to life in that movie, so no.
He's also voiced by Jensen Ackles.
Professional funny man and sweetheart is unexpectedly killed fairly early in the series because he figured out the overarching plot way too early, so the villains needed him out of the way. His death serves as a major motivation for most of the heroes, most notably Roy Mustang, but it's not just a token heroic motivator to get the protagonists in gear. It feels...
For most of the heroes, no. Well, Mustang
is definitely a yes.
And Edward. Hughes' wife does tell her to tell them to keep moving forward, otherwise he died for nothing.
Yeah.
It really doesn't actually influence that many of the characters we call the heroes of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly just Ed, Allen, and Mustang.
Those are probably the main characters though, so that I guess that's one of them.
Unfair, he fights very hard to stop it from happening, his wife and daughter are devastated, and the ramifications are felt all the way up to the finale. This death would not work the same if it happened off screen, and it could not be replaced by a binder of Pokemon cards. It means too much to the story, so it's not fridging. Fridged characters do not
False
get this
equip.
kind.
Oh god. Still talking about the possessions argument.
Yeah. Again, Batman's parents.
Depends on the context of the story. Yeah, this is a thing I hate about videos that try to break stories down like it's some kind of mathematical equation.
It implies that there's a correct way to tell a story.
Yes.
Or the utilization of certain themes,
it's also why I hate watching writing advice videos. It just doesn't feel natural.
Hmm.
I mean, I'll take some writing advice from people here and there and read other people's work, but overall, I still want my work to have its own identity. I don't want it to be a copy of someone else's formula. Honestly, the best way to improve your writing is just to keep writing, and then eventually you'll look back at your early writings and realize they all suck, which means you yourself haven't now improved as a writer. And that's what I've realized with the book I'm writing. My going back to my Now that I'm doing my second draft, I'm going back to my older writing, and realize, wow, this is horrible. I'm going to improve it now.
Of treatment, and frankly, they're lucky if they get personal arcs at all. They die only to make another, more important character feel sad or mad. It's not a heroic sacrifice, they have no agency in it, they're not at peace with it, and their personal arcs, if they get them, aren't neatly resolved in time for it.
Yes, because life often lets you resolve personal arcs and finish business you have on this planet before it takes you.
Their death or brutalization is cruel and unfair because it's designed to feel cruel and unfair to the character they're supposed to hurt or motivate.
It's supposed to feel cruel and unfair just in general.
But as a result, it undercuts the only semi-okay parts of character deaths and just makes the experience relentlessly unpleasant and catharsis-free for the audience. Now, this is not a mistake. This is an intentional part of the trope, because it essentially sets up an unstable narrative situation the protagonist must now work to stabilize and resolve, usually by hunting down and stuff.
Fridging is intentionally narratively unsatisfying.
What do you mean intentionally?
It's supposed to feel bad, so we sympathize with the character it upsets. But if the story is, doing if the author and if the writers are doing, their job, then we should already be relating to the character in that way. Like that's the thing. This is the thing about fridging is it's probably the most realistic trope ever, because this is something that happens. Like, I know it's a cliche, but you often don't, but sometimes you leave someone else on a bad note and suddenly the next day they're gone. And that's sad, but is that fridging? No. Oh, it's just how life works sometimes.
Stopping the killer. This is a motivation that starts an arc, so it's not meant to feel like an arc resolution, which is often the only part of a character death the audience halfway appreciates.
But this kind of character death absolutely could be an arc resolution. Like, it would provide resolution to an arc. It could absolutely do that. But, like, I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't right now.
but it betrays a fundamental dismissal of the Fridge character, which undercuts the very emotional impact they're trying to invoke. As an example, when Alan Moore wrote The Killing Joke, Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, is shot, paralyzed, and brutalized by the Joker, entirely to upset Jim Gordon and Batman and kick off one last terrible joke. She's not even killed.
Okay. Okay. Well, you're taking the whole scene, the whole comic out of context. Okay. As someone who actually read the comic, the whole point is that Joker is trying to push Gordon to become a lunatic like he is. Because in that comic, we see the Joker's backstory, or at least what Joker thinks his backstory is. Joker says that sometimes he keeps remembering his backstory differently. But anyway, the point is, in that backstory, we learn that the Joker had what was started out as a normal guy. He had a one really bad day. Like his pregnant wife got killed, and he was forced to take part in some kind of crime and some kind of crime break in, and then he encounters Batman, and then he falls into chemicals, and now he looks like a clown, and that all of that shit just piling up at him at once just pushed him off the edge. And now that's what the Joker is trying to do with Gordon by shooting Barbara, taking pictures of her naked, and then showing all those images to Gordon repeatedly. He's just trying to prove to Gordon that anybody can be like me. All it takes is just one bad day.
How this traumatic event affects her is entirely glossed over in story. In fact, all she says to Batman afterwards from her hospital bed is how worried she is about what the Joker's gonna do to her dad. It's heroic of her to be concerned, but that's not why her reaction was written that way. Barbara didn't matter to this story.
So, and help. So, it's not the story is not about her.
I agree. The story isn't about her. But
and then once again, after this comic, Barbara becomes the Oracle. So it's not like this is all for nothing.
yeah, exactly. Like it's not as if like Barbara at that point is just she's already at her lowest. Like she doesn't think the Joker could do anything worse to her. Or because he's taken so much. But she cares and loves her father and she is concerned for him.
Alan Moore has actually said he kind of regrets treating her that way. He thinks his editor probably should have reined him in instead of responding.
Alan Moore is also insane.
Yeah. Let's just put that on the table right now. Alan Moore is a crazy man.
Apparently quoting, "Yeah, okay, cripple the bitch." That fundamental dismissiveness on the part of the creator really does drive home.
But this is like,
yeah, it's not. I don't think he's trying to be misogynistic or anything like that by saying that. It's just kind of saying it more humorously.
That fridging is a fundamentally broken trope.
A lot of us guys have a very raunchy sense of humor.
Doesn't care about the character enough to give their pain narrative weight, they'll have a very hard time convincing the audience to care when they suffer. The only way the author can make the audience care in this situation is by making this unimportant death hurt another, more important character. But since the author doesn't care about the fridged character, they'll have a hard time writing the more important character's reaction to their fridging.
I mean,
why
hell,
would I care about a disposable minion?
Actually, even then, going back to the Killing Joke, like I think it was written just to be like a one-off story. It wasn't even supposed to actually be canon to the main universe. Even the ending kind of leaves an implication that Batman might have just strangled Joker to death. But even then, it's only like after the matter that the comic actually became canonized and Barbara became Oracle.
And I bet there's at least something about her being mourning this tragedy that happened to her.
The more more important character cares more about the fridged character than the author does, so how is the author supposed to write their grief when they clearly can't even imagine it? It comes across as shallow and hollow because on a very real level it is. A fridging isn't just lacking in resolution, it's usually lacking in real emotional weight. We're lucky if we really know the character who dies, and if we don't, then killing them only affects us by how it affects the characters who care about them, and only if we care about those characters in turn. Killing off a character we're not
What?
invested in tells
I'm just hearing words right now.
Same. I think what she said was basically if like that whole point of the character's weight must be treated equally, otherwise it's no good.
us that character was never going to matter on their own merit, which can disengage the audience from the story as a whole. So opening a story by fridging someone sends a pretty clear message to the audience that most characters don't matter, which speedruns the disengaged audience problem right out of the gate. Fun.
What do you mean? Like that's the if torching the village and killing the father is the inciting incident, it's what pushes the story forward. If the inciting incident doesn't happen, then the story doesn't go anywhere.
Fun fact, this is how Supernatural begins. I tried watching it way back when and lost interest after the first season or so, but I remember the pilot because it's burned into my brain. Even at the time, I could kind of tell the writing wasn't working. First scene, we meet our protagonists as young children in an idyllic home with their father and mother. Smash cut to the night, their father wakes up to see his wife stuck to the ceiling with a horrified expression. Then she explodes and the house burns down. Smash cut to the main plot, it's a couple decades later, brother 1 is in college and has a girlfriend, brother 2 shows up and tries to give him a call to adventure to make the actual plot happen. Brother 1 is reluctant because he's got so much going on for him in his personal life right now. Then brother 1's girlfriend gets stuck to the ceiling and explodes, so it's time for a road trip. The first time it happened, it was kind of spooky.
Okay, stop. So I haven't seen this episode, but I'm going to assume what killed his girlfriend is the same thing that killed his mother, or in some way
Yes.
connected. So yeah, and that's not even. Are you trying to say that they're both being fridged in that situation? Well, they're not essential to the plot, other than it's what motivates. It's like motivates them to
move
start
on.
the plot.
Yeah. Like that whole like the only reason Sam and Dean, okay, I've seen Supernatural up to I believe about season 12.
Shit, that
The
many seasons.
whole reason, the only reason Supernatural happens is because their dad basically dragged them around the country and trained them to cat zoomies, train them to hunt and kill monsters, like all in pursuit of this yellow-eyed demon that killed John's wife.
All right. She
and
better not.
Sam's girlfriend.
She better not say that the mother getting killed is fridging, because if she does that, then we need to go. Then we'll have to go back to Full Metal Alchemist. The whole story, the whole plot is set into motion because the Elric's mother died.
I actually laughed. I looked this up to make sure I was remembering the details right, and apparently in the plot, both of these women were killed specifically because the bad guy had plans for the protagonist, and in the case of the girlfriend, he's the one who introduced them in the first place, specifically so he could manipulate the protagonist by killing her. That's just, God, that's so fun.
Okay. It happens. Sometimes villains will do shit like that to piss off the main character.
Yeah, like basic story structure.
Funny. That's the pilot. No wonder death is meaningless in this show. So,
fun fact, that's true. That's the one thing she said that I've 100% agreed with.
fridging tries to have things both ways. It gives us a character who clearly doesn't matter on their own, and then kills them in a way that highlights that they didn't matter to the story by their own merit, but then tries to tell us that their death really, really mattered to the character we're supposed to sympathize with. It's like the worst kind of damsel in distress.
I mean, his girlfriend died, so yeah.
But, like... I might be missing my mark here, but I feel like her whole argument in this latter half of the video is that unless like every character gets like at least a page of characterization, their deaths don't have meaning.
So is it even?
And that's not the case. It depends on the context of the story.
Yep. And also, and it doesn't really count as a damsel in distress if like she's kind of made to be fodder.
That's a good question.
In trouble whose only trait we're given to care about is that they're in trouble. It's almost the epitome of tell don't show. If we don't care about the character and they die quickly and unceremoniously, we never have a reason to care. If we do care about the character and they die quickly and unceremoniously, and all we focus on is how bad that makes someone else feel, it feels like a bad use of their potential, and it makes us aware of the hand of the author, which is never a good thing. Now, some authors recognize this without really recognizing the problem, and will try to play it one of two ways. In one school of thought, the soon-to-be fridged character will suddenly be given an unprecedented amount of on-screen focus and a handful of purposefully heartwarming or cute character traits to quickly get the audience invested in this hitherto non-character so it feels halfway momentous when they die. I like to...
So, you know, like every character, basically.
We call this the Whedon School of Fridging, or the Coulson effect. This is the author's attempt to speedrun the getting the audience invested process without having to actually make the character stand on their own, or, like, matter. And on the flip side, sometimes a...
Wait, how did he not matter though? His death is what finally got the Avengers to stop fighting and actually work together. Not to mention we've seen him throughout the entire we've
Several
seen him.
movies.
Yeah, we've seen him in the Iron Man 1 and Thor 1.
Isn't he in Iron Man 2?
Maybe. I don't think so.
Bridge character will give some kind of token justification for why their death is okay, actually, usually along the lines of, I'm at peace now, or I already have everything I wanted, or the real treasure was our friendship, or something. This is an attempt to kludge together a satisfying...
So does this also apply to that scientist in Iron Man 1 that helped Stark build his prototype suit?
Oh, that's an example. That's a good example.
I mean, he also dies saying, "I'm at peace. I'm going to go back. I'm going to be with my family again."
Yeah.
Resolution, so it doesn't feel completely unceremonious, but it suffers from the fact that the fridged character definitely didn't have an arc leading up to it. It doesn't fully counterbalance the disengaging...
I have no idea what movie this is.
I have no idea what movie this is either.
Gut punch of an unceremonious character death because it feels token and disconnected. If the character's arc was really resolved, we probably shouldn't need to hear them say it out loud seconds before they die. It's like how we shouldn't need to hear the...
I mean, are they saying it to the other characters so they don't feel bad about the person's death? Like I said, going back to the scientist or the engineer guy from Iron Man 1. He's like, yeah, like Stark's trying to say, like, no, we need to get out of here. You need to be with you need to get back with your family. He's like, no, this is fine. My family's dead. I'm going to be with them now. Don't worry about me. Save yourself.
Characters say I love you to know they're in love, you know? I love you shouldn't be a surprise to the audience, and neither should I'm totes cool with death now. Both just end up feeling like a way to compensate for inadequate writing last minute. You may recall, Black Widow's death in Endgame did both of these things, and it was bad because neither of these writing tricks make up for wasted character potential.
Bullshit.
Her character arc had come to a close. You just didn't pay close enough attention.
Agreed. All right, how not to fridge. Treat the character like a main character, or at least a beloved secondary character.
Black Widow was both of those things.
Give them a character beyond their relationship to the hero they're attached to, hopes, dreams, agency, other relationships. So we want a second main character, I guess?
I mean, characters, like, there's nothing inherently wrong with a character being defined by their relationship with the main character.
That's basically how rom-coms work.
it just sounds like pure feminist drivel right there. Just because a lot of feminists hate that. Oh, when a female character is defined by being connected with a male character in some way,
Mm-hmm.
that's inherently wrong, and apparently it never goes both ways.
Damn. Okay, hold on.
I mean, I never got far in the Hunger Games series, but is Gale defined in any way besides being a potential love interest for Katniss?
In the last book, yes, which like contributes to Katniss's inevitable fall from like sanity. Give their death time and weight to have an impact on the characters, not just one scene or a couple of minutes of stoicism. Okay, but I have
Wait,
uh,
wait, how long is time? People
like
die. People can die very abruptly, like a shot to the head.
or what do you mean by weight? Like, okay, so what if this one scene happens right before we engage in the big battle? Like, we can't just hold off for like a whole moment of silence while while the villainous army tramples us. That's because we need to give this character's death weight. Remember the off-screen and the property damage tests and when handling emotional weight.
Avoiding fridging is a matter of giving the character their narrative due. It's about treating them like they really are the hero of their own story and writing their death or
But why? I would
Yeah. Oh yes. How is Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru the hero of their own story? They're I wouldn't even call them secondary characters. They're like tertiary characters.
Mm-hmm.
I
Like
just
I I don't I don't understand what she wants. Every book would have to be of length infinitum because you would have to explore each and every single character that you came across. In order supposedly for their death to have weight.
brutalization as if that's where the story actually ends. How much more impactful would a fridging be if the story actually acted like an important story was ending with their death? And how many riots would there be if an actually important main character was iced as unceremoniously as these fridging victims are? If Captain America had gone over that cliff with a token little half smile and an I'm at peace now, there would have been fucking riots in the streets, and you know it.
Well,
no.
no. There
Marvel
definitely would have
fans
been
are not soccer fans.
No, I agree. I agree with her because here's the thing: Cap hadn't in the MCU. The reason they didn't have Cap do it because he probably would have. Like I can absolutely see Cap being the one
Yeah, me too.
to sacrifice himself. But he had unfinished business. Like his story arc, his character had not wrapped up. So to kill him off would have been ridiculous, an utterly ridiculous narrative loss because this is one of your main characters.
I guess this is just another trope that boils down to it's better to write actual characters with agency and personal goals instead of people-shaped plot devices. It's funny how often that happens. So, yeah, and thanks again to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. As you may know.
Like again, okay, never mind.
I
I
don't
don't
I
really
don't
know
think
what
that
to
there's
say that
we
doesn't
can
involve just recapping everything we've already said these past 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I agree.
that was a really bad take.
Yeah.
But that's it. That was pretty fun. Probably
Yep.
one of the most fun recordings we've done in a while.
Yeah. I agree. Uh So next week we will both be back. We'll be reviewing High Guardian Spice. It is unlikely that
Oh,
you'll
boy.
see High Guardian Spice, but we'll be reviewing the series. Other than that,
How many episodes are there?
12.
Oh,
12, they're about 30 minutes each.
and they're all free to watch on
Yes.
Crunchyroll. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Y'all have a great night.